Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, February the 16th, 2024. One of the reasons I do this channel is because I do like teaching, and I suppose some of my content is perhaps of a instructional nature, but I don't want to claim that I have sort of superior knowledge. I suppose I'm maybe helped by the fact that I've been doing astrology for so long. I think it's nearly 40 years. I started learning in 1985, so yeah, it's nearly 40 years. But when I do this channel, it is not just a one-way street where I'm just sort of giving stuff out. I do read the comments, and when I read the comments, I often learn something. And yesterday I talked about Chiron, and I did get some feedback about Chiron, and people gave their views on Chiron. For example, one commenter, B. Davis, really emphasized the fact that Chiron is about a wound, and that is something I accept, that Chiron in your horoscope is about some place in your chart where it represents some part of you where you might feel there is a wound, that something has been hurt, and I certainly accept that. And another commenter, Lisa Michelle, made a suggestion that Chiron is the grandfather, and that, well, okay, not necessarily literally the grandfather, but one should perhaps look at the grandfather and look at that part of the family, and look at things to do perhaps with one's past and of one's family's past, and that might tell you something about how Chiron worked. So I considered that suggestion, and actually that gave me a lot of pause for thought. And I feel I did actually learn something about my Chiron. So thank you, Lisa Michelle, for that suggestion. Now, I'm not going to talk about my chart in this video. I think I might do it in another video, but I want to actually discuss why I think that might be appropriate, certainly for me, to look at the grandfather in terms of Chiron. And I might try and look for some other charts of where about grandfathers to get any idea about that. So yes, thank you for all of the suggestions and comments, because I do learn from them. I do read all the comments, and it's not just me giving stuff out. I do listen and learn. Now, as far as today's video is concerned, I'm going to primarily look at the Venus-Pluto conjunction. There is a Venus-Pluto conjunction. I think it's actually exact tomorrow, because the Venus is just going into Aquarius today, and it I think it actually makes a conjunction with Pluto tomorrow on Saturday. And I want to look at a few people with Venus-Pluto conjunction. Two of those people are on the thumbnail. One of them is Kamala Harris, who's got a Venus-Pluto conjunction. And then there is Bomber Harris. Bomber Harris was a sort of British airman. I don't know, was the Air Chief Marshal Bomber Harris, and he was primarily responsible or in charge of Britain's bombing of Germany during the Second World War, and he has a Venus-Pluto conjunction. So I want to consider that. Now, I do on thumbnail have a picture of Natalie Wood. Now, Natalie Wood does not have a Venus-Pluto conjunction. She has a Mars-Pluto conjunction. Now, the reason I want to talk about Natalie Wood is because, as astrologers, I think we often find it interesting when we find two people who are doing the same thing born on the same day. And this is a case of Natalie Wood. So Natalie Wood was born on, I think, July the 20th, 1938. And obviously she was a very famous actress who died under slightly unusual circumstances in November 1981. And she was born on the same day as Diana Rigg. And I talked about Diana Rigg with reference to Mars-Pluto conjunction as well, because Diana Rigg has a Mars-Pluto conjunction. So I wanted to look at these two actresses. Both are dead. Diana Rigg died a few years ago. I think she died in 2020 of lung cancer. I think Diana Rigg was quite a heavy smoker. So I want to look at those charts, and I want to sort of consider the differences between the two women. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Friday, February the 16th, 2024. So here is the chart for today. That's another chart. That's okay. Here's the chart. So you can see that at noon in New York today, the moon was at 2832 Taurus. So moon's still in Taurus, but about to move into Gemini. In fact, the moon moves into Gemini at 7:39 p.m. London time. So if you are in London or Western Europe, then the moon moves into Gemini this evening, and you might experience some change. When the moon goes into Gemini, in fact, any mutable sign, we always have this sort of contradictory interpretation, because moon moves into Gemini. That's a big change, moving out of out of Taurus into Gemini. It creates more flexibility, more room for maneuver. But then, the moment the moon moves into Gemini, it starts to make an aspect to Saturn. But that Saturn aspect is some way off. So I think that it's not really such a downer as it sounds, and I think that the movement into Gemini may create a change. So if you're in Western Europe and you're going out on Friday evening, you might notice a sudden change. Suddenly things start to liven up. Now, if you're in the Americas, well, in New York, the moon will change sign at 2:59 p.m. So 2:39 p.m. So around 20 to 3 in the afternoon. So in New York, a good chunk of the day will have the moon in Gemini. If you are in California, then it's even earlier. It'll be at 20 to 12, 11:39 in the morning. So you've got over half the day with the moon in Gemini. So to an extent, it depends where you are, but we do have overall this change from the moon moving from Taurus to Gemini. So things start to become perhaps more interesting. There's greater flow, there's greater flexibility, there's greater change. People are happier to communicate. Though I should say that if you're in sort of the Middle East, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, the moon is effectively makes a change tomorrow. So that's more of something for Saturday. Also today, Venus moves into Aquarius. This sign change happens at 4:05 in the afternoon, London time, which would be 11:05 in the morning in sort of New York time. That is a change. Is it a major change? Well, Venus has been moving moving through Capricorn for some time, and Capricorn is a sign ruled by Saturn, and so Venus is just moving into Aquarius, which is another sign ruled by Saturn. So in some respects, there's no change at all, because Venus's rulership doesn't change. Also, the fact that Venus is in mixed reception with Saturn doesn't change. Now, by that I mean that Saturn is currently in Pisces, and Venus is exalted in Pisces. By the same token, Saturn rules Capricorn and it rules Aquarius. So there is a mixed reception between Venus and Saturn, and there has been for some time. So that doesn't change. Having said that, Venus and Saturn have a slightly different relationship when Venus moves into Aquarius. Aquarius is a different sign, a different type of sign from Aquarius, in a sense that Aquarius is positive. It's masculine. It's more active. And so Venus in Aquarius may feel, when it goes into Aquarius, there may be a sense in which it wants to be more active in terms of ideas. Venus in Aquarius is an idea sign. It's an air sign. And I think that there may be a greater sense of detachment. And I know that Venus is in mixed reception with Saturn. That helps, but there is still a detachment to Aquarius. So with Venus in Aquarius, it's not a particularly emotional place for Venus to be. We're going to want some space, and I think we're going to want intellectual space, and we're not going to appreciate it if people tell us what to do. And we may observe this in other people. Other people are going to be perhaps more independent. They're going to be more interested in asserting their independence. So that's something we do need to look out for. As far as what else is going on, okay, I should say that we do now have a lot of stuff in Aquarius. Sort of look at this chart. We've got Venus in Aquarius, we've got Mars in Aquarius, we've got Mercury in Aquarius, we've got Sun in Aquarius, and of course we've got Pluto in Aquarius. We are getting a major build-up in Aquarius, and we're going to have these 5 planets in Aquarius for another few days, and then the Sun moves out of Aquarius into Pisces, and so some of that Aquarius strength is going to break up. But all the stuff I said about detachment and independence and ideas, that is going to be important. And we shouldn't forget that Pluto has just gone into Aquarius, and so with all this stuff in Aquarius, maybe we're getting a real feel for what it is for Pluto to be in Aquarius, because it's so supported by these 4 other planets. How do we feel about the government? How do we feel about the concept of rebellion? There is a certain amount of rebelliousness about Aquarius, because Aquarius doesn't like being told what to do. Yet Aquarius also likes to control people. As I think I've said before, there is a link between the sign Aquarius and totalitarianism. And we can see totalitarianism, and we can at the same time see some of the narratives being put forward by governments being challenged. Things are starting to sort of break. I was looking at some sort of news channels regarding, say, something like Ukraine in the West. Last couple of years there has been this absolute obsession by governments and Western news channels about Ukraine. I've got to support Ukraine. You cannot come up with any alternative view. Then it seems that, with this interview between Tucker Carlson and Putin, I do feel that things have changed. I think things were changing anyway, but just looking at some mainstream news channels, you can see that people are starting to question it. And so maybe this is what's going on with stuff in Aquarius, with Pluto moving into Aquarius, all these planets moving into Aquarius. Governments are doubling down, maybe not just about Ukraine, but about a lot of other things. And people are at the same time starting to question what governments are saying. So maybe we're seeing something quite important happen with this build-up in Aquarius. Okay, this build-up will dissipate. And in fact, later in the year, Pluto actually leaves Aquarius and it goes back into Capricorn. But really, it's perhaps a sign of things to come. So aside from the Aquarius build-up, we have a 36-degree angle between Mars and Saturn. They are a decile each other. 36 degrees is 1/10 of the circle. So you can see that Mars is at 2 degrees something Aquarius. Saturn is at 8 degrees Pisces. So you can see that Mars and Saturn are 36 degrees apart. And I did discuss this aspect when I looked at what was going on this week. So Mars and Saturn as a pair are hard work. Mars is the lesser malefic. Saturn is the greater malefic. You put them together and you get quite a sort of grinding, harsh view of the world, or at least you can, which at times can relate to death and destruction. So the decile is an aspect which is about style, because we're trying to create something with the quintile, which is a fifth of the circle. With a tenth of the circle, it is the struggle to create something. So because that's 5 times 2. 5 is about the man-made number. 2 is about the struggle to create something, struggle to create a particular style. And I think some of us may be struggling to create a style that is quite sort of grinding. And it may be that some of us may be tempted to talk about death and destruction in an exaggerated way, as a way of giving an impression, trying to have an impact. It's always a good way to have an impact, to talk about death, and that's something I do. I'm afraid I fall into that trap myself. As you perhaps would have noticed if you'd looked at this, if you've been watching my videos. So it may be connected with the way people dress. There may be something austere about the way people dress. Mars, Saturn, decile. But also with the communication. I suppose one group of people who are very much into creating that kind of style are undertakers. The last time I had anything to do with undertakers, was it 2017 when my mother died, communicating with the undertakers, and this incredible style that undertakers have, this incredible solemnity that they're able to create with their dress and what the way they talk in these measured tones, and everything is they're very careful about what they say. So yes, if you happen to have a Mars decile in Saturn in your chart, maybe you'd make a good undertaker. Better still would be Mars quintile Saturn, because then it would be the style would be very easy. If you had a Mars decile in Saturn in your chart, then you'd be struggling to create this style. Um, so that's the broad picture today. And what I want to do now is do my forecasts for today, which is Friday, February the 16th, 2024. Aries, things are changing. You're perhaps becoming less concerned about financial stuff, what you own, possibly because you've sorted it out, or you are in the process of sorting it out. So today, Aries, it may be about doing a few sort of last minute details, last minute changes. You're kind of ready to sort of move on to something else, and I think because of this, you are becoming more communicative. But don't push it. I think, Aries, there's still some stuff that needs to be worked on over the day, and that it's pretty much coming to an end. I suppose it's Friday. You can start to change your focus, and I think you're going to be increasingly concerned about other people and what they're doing. It is Friday. Friday is often a day for socializing, seeing what people are around, new people, and I think that there may be someone new appearing over the horizon. Someone maybe you don't know very well. They may not be completely on your wavelength, or you thought they weren't on your wavelength, but it's certainly worth your while trying to interact with them, because I think you can benefit from the situation. As the day progresses, you're going to find it easier and easier to communicate. Now, as far as your work is concerned, if you happen to be working today, then you may start to see your work and why you're doing what you're doing in a different way. Now, this is a process that actually has been happening over the last few weeks. You're increasingly not just seeing things in terms of money and status. It's also about purpose, and you are getting a great sense of what your purpose should be. However old or young you are perhaps reaching the conclusion that none of us live forever. Just focusing on money and what we own and what we possess is not quite enough. There is something quite existential there. We have to, we perhaps only live once, and we've got to make the most of what we've got and what we've been given, and that means we must be considering our particular set of ideals, and there's nothing trivial about that. We have a sense of ideals, we have a sense of purpose, and we need to put that into every aspect of our life, including our work. And if what we're doing is unsatisfactory, then we need to do something about that. But maybe you can be helped by other people. I just said that there's someone new perhaps appearing on over the horizon. Someone who I think has a different view of the world, and by talking to this person, it may not just be one person, maybe a few people, you can start to see the world in a different way. Which brings me on to the subject of relationships. Now, in the Aries chart, Aries, your opposite sign is Libra. So Venus rules Libra. So if you're trying to work out what's going on in relationships for Aries, you traditionally look at what Venus is doing. And what is Venus doing? Venus is moving from Capricorn into Aquarius. So that might suggest, in the most general sense, that partners, those close to you, have experienced some kind of change. They're perhaps becoming more positive, clearer about what they believe. And in many respects, they're going to be more fun. More definite. But we shouldn't forget that Venus is starting to make a conjunction with Pluto. Now, that conjunction between Venus and Pluto is not exact until tomorrow, but it's very close. You're starting to feel it, and so you may find that other people are more passionate. Okay, when I say passionate, I don't mean passionate in a particularly emotional way, because the Venus-Pluto conjunction is in Aquarius. That's an air sign. Aquarius is not a passionate sign, but Aquarius is very focused on what it believes in. It doesn't compromise. So perhaps passionate is the wrong word, but it's about being unwilling to change. Having made up one's mind, that is it. And you need to respect that in the people close to you. You're not going to change anyone's mind today. It's just not going to happen. You might want to, but really it's a waste of time. It's going to just cause arguments. But is that what you really want to do? I think in many respects, your main priority is actually going to be about building bridges with people. I think that's actually going to be quite important for Aries today. You're going to feel that the best way to express yourself is with another person and through another person. And I think because of that, you're not going to want to damage relationships by being too vocal in some of your views, particularly if the other person has different views. And I think that's going to be an important priority for Aries. Creating good relationships and creating new ties between yourself and one other person, or maybe several other people. But I think that is going to be important for you today. Taurus, you're now in a position where you really feel, or you're starting to feel, a great sense of clarity. I think Taurus, that there have been times over the last few weeks where you've been indecisive. You've perhaps been trying to work things out, and you've been trying to, work out what you believe in, what you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be. And I think in the process, you've had a certain amount of flexibility. You have been prepared to listen to other people's ideas. Maybe you've made a few changes in your own view of the world. And now you can start to be more focused. This is because, Venus is your ruler. And Venus is changing sign from Capricorn into Aquarius. I mean, the precise moment it changes sign kind of depends where you are. but it's an overall theme for the day, and for tomorrow. That Venus is changing sign. It's moving into a sign which, from a Taurean perspective, is pretty high profile, and I think that you want to tell the world who you are and what you want, and you also want to tell the world that you're not really in the mood for compromise. And I think it's because you've made up your mind. And once Taurus has made up its mind, then that's it. And, as I said at the beginning of this video, or in the previous section when I was talking about the general picture, we do now have 5 planets in Aquarius. Okay, it depends on your time zone when Venus moves into Aquarius. When we move from having 4 planets in Aquarius to 5 planets in Aquarius, that really does put a major emphasis on how you feel about your career, your business, your way forward, how you present yourself to the outside world, and you're going to be very definite. And in your own way, Taurus, I think you're going to be very original. Now, there is a sort of stereotypical view of Taurans that somehow they're set in their ways, that they're a bit stuck in the past because it's a fixed sign. But that's just a stereotype. You can be original and you can be a revolutionary. Taurus is actually quite a revolutionary sign. The reason Taurus is quite a revolutionary sign is because they're able to see it through. To be a revolutionary, you have to see it through. It's no good just having ideas. Lots of people have ideas. Anyone can stick a badge on themselves, whatever, whether it's a CND badge, one of those anarchy A with a circle around it, and say, well, I'm an anarchist because I've got a circled A on me. But Taurus goes beyond that. Taurus says, no, it's not enough just to have adornments. You've actually got to see it through. And I think that is something you're going to be able to do, though some people might regard you as being a fanatic. But maybe, Taurus, this is a time to be a fanatic. Fanaticism is not just about blowing things up and causing destruction. It's about being fanatical to an idea and being able to see it through. Of course, it depends on the situation. Fanatics can cause a lot of damage by refusing to consider other points of view. But sometimes, in order to get your way, you really do have to be able to see it through. And I think that you're going to be helped by the fact that today there is a conjunction between the Moon and Uranus. Moon and Uranus are both in Taurus, so okay, I know the Taurus is about to move into Gemini. It depends on your time zone, on when the moon is in Gemini. But wherever you are, you're going to have a part of the day where the moon is still in Taurus, and so with Moon conjunct Uranus, that does sort of emphasize your rebellious streak, and it does sort of represent your stubbornness. Yes, you can be very stubborn, and I think your stubbornness, I think, is a bonus. I think it's the right thing to do. It's not a time to just be compromising, to be here, there, and everywhere. Finishing up with relationships. So the moment Venus moves into Aquarius, it starts making a conjunction with Mars. I mean, you've got Venus and Mars moving closer and closer together in the same sign, and that does indicate, Taurus, that you and someone else are getting closer. But I mean, I don't mean necessarily emotionally closer. I'm talking more about ideas closer, having a similar view of the world, and perhaps having the same obsessions. And perhaps that's what you should be looking for. If you and someone else have the same priorities, have the same worries, have the same political concerns, because Venus and Mars are in Aquarius, then that can be the basis for a really good relationship. And if you're already involved in a relationship and you want to improve this relationship, or if there have been recent problems, you're trying to you're trying to sort of find a way of calming things down. Perhaps what you need to do is create a common focus. You and someone else might disagree with a lot of what each other are doing. You might have lots of clashes for lots of different reasons, but you need to find somewhere where you both have absolute agreement. Find that thing, whatever it is, and once you've found it, really push it. And that way the areas where you disagree can sort of fade into the background. And if that can be political or ideological, so much the better. Gemini. The moon is starting to move into your star sign. And that does depend where you are. If you're in the Americas, then it will be sort of perhaps around early afternoon, even lunchtime, depends where you are. If you're in Europe, it'll be sort of in this evening. But you can still feel it. You can still feel that something is changing. And with the moon in your star sign, whether you feel the moon moving into your star sign today, or whether it's more this evening or tomorrow that you feel it, it is a sense that you are sort of grounded. I mean, grounded in the sense of being in the right place. You're not so alienated. You don't feel it's not quite so necessary to be separate from the rest of the world. You can be more engaging with the moon in Gemini, and it will be easier to be taken seriously. And this comes at the same time as Venus moving into Aquarius. Now, Venus moving into Aquarius for Geminis is important because Venus and Gemini, they're both air signs. You've had Venus in Capricorn for a long time, or for a few weeks, and so with Venus in Capricorn, you haven't really been in the mood to engage. Some Geminis have been a little too wrapped up in their feelings, especially when having to deal with other people. But then with Venus moving into Aquarius, there's going to be less intensity, and you're going to be better able to sort of open your eyes, see what's around you, not have to focus too much on complicated emotion, and yeah, that's going to make you an easier person to have around. And I think with Venus moving into Aquarius, you're going to be curious, and you're going to be in a position where you can benefit from other people's ideas and other people's experiences. So it's important not to be closed-minded, Gemini. Gemini is not a closed-minded sign, but Geminis can sometimes not take too seriously other people's ideas. You hear, but you don't listen. And that can be a Gemini problem. And just to remind you, I'm a Gemini, so I understand that. So yes, engage with people's ideas, especially if those ideas are very different from your own, because I think in the process you can learn something, and it is, Gemini, very important for you to be positive, to bring something positive and optimistic to the table. You know, don't fall into the trap today of just being an observer. You might like to be an observer. It may be easier to be an observer. That can be the problem, Gemini. You go to a society, whatever that society might be. I mean, I'm talking about a society as in a culture. Like me, I'm from the UK, but I'm living in America. And it's so easy just to be an observer here, isn't it? Being a Gemini, you can just look at people and you can observe people, and you make observations, and you can say, well, that's ridiculous. You're just not part of it. That is a Gemini problem. So try not to be just an observer. You've got something to contribute here. It's very important that you're able to contribute it, because really it's expected of you. If you're not contributing, you're not really part of the flow of life. And yeah, I know some Geminis can analyze, as I've said several times before recently, can analyze themselves out of existence. You've got to be part of the flow of life, Gemini, and I think that is very important today. And that means engaging with other people and just seeing what other people can offer, because at the moment other people have actually got quite a lot to offer if you give them a chance. Some of the people around you are actually very, very talented. Do you know how talented they are? Maybe you don't. Maybe you haven't given certain people the recognition they deserve. And I think if you're, for example, looking for good relations with people, then recognition of their talents is going to be really important. If that doesn't make sense to you, maybe you should ask some questions. Find out what someone is good at, because you might be surprised. Cancer, it's a day when you're feeling that maybe something is coming to an end. Maybe you're starting to see people for what they are. You're beginning to understand a particular situation. You didn't really understand it before, but now you understand it. You're able to make your move. And in its own way, that move could be quite dramatic, because it's a drama of understanding something. It just becomes clear. And that understanding may come in your social life, talking to friends, talking to people, associates, friends, colleagues, just talking to people, listening to what they say. And at a certain stage, there just could be a realization, and suddenly it's just there, and you absolutely understand the situation, and you are then in a position to make your move. What is that move? I think in some respects, Cancer, that move may be about stepping back, because there is really quite a lot of scope here for contemplation. There are a lot of things that really need to be thought about. You've understood a lot of things. You've taken on board a lot of things about a lot of other people, about the world in which you live, and you do need time for contemplation. You need to really work out what needs to be done next. And I think this is given further support, this concept, by the fact that Venus is moving out of Capricorn. So Venus, which is a planet of relationships, has been moving through Capricorn for a few weeks. I don't know, when did it go into Capricorn? Well, probably more like a month. And Venus is out of Capricorn, and that does change the nature of certain relationships. It's not just about you, sort of on a sort of one-to-one level. This is you, this is them, this is a relationship. It suddenly becomes a little more complicated. The easy bit is over. You understand what someone is like. You understand who they are. But now perhaps you have to start to consider someone at a sort of a deeper level. And that perhaps requires some detachment. You can't understand someone if you're really close to them. I mean, that might sound a bit contradictory, but if you're really close to them, you kind of lose your objectivity. And now is a time when you need to get a bit of distance, because once you've got some distance, you can think things through, and of course feel things through. That's very important if you're a Cancerian. Cancer is a water sign, and you need to feel things through, and then you'll be in a better position. You'll be in a better position to act. Now, I am not saying, though, that you need to be a hermit. Your interpersonal skills remain excellent. Indeed, they may become even better with Venus moving into Aquarius. I think you're going to be able to work at a level of, how shall I put it, sort of logical emotion. The emotions will be strong, but you'll be able to rationalize them and understand them and interpret them and put them into words. And that's really important. It's not enough just to have a load of feelings. You've got to be able to work out what those feelings mean, and you've got to be able to verbalize those feelings. Verbalize those feelings not in the sense of talking to the world about them, but I'm talking more about your internal conversation. So your internal conversation about other people is going to be very vivid, and it's going to be very useful, because you'll be able to verbalize to yourself what people are like. And I think this, with Venus moving into Aquarius, I think that's really going to facilitate it. And in the end, you'll be able to draw the right conclusions, and you'll be able to work out how best to deal with people, and indeed whether or not you want certain people in your life or not. Leo, you are not alone. You really are not alone. You cannot be alone. That is because we're starting to get a very big build-up in Aquarius, which is your opposite sign. I've talked about this before when I've looked at your horoscope, but Venus is moving into Aquarius now. It depends where you are, your time zone, when exactly Venus moves into Aquarius. But today, perhaps tomorrow, if you're in Asia or Australia, New Zealand, but Venus is moving there. So we've got 5 planets in Aquarius, 4 traditional planets, which is Sun, Mercury, Mars, and now Venus, and we've got Pluto, which is a discovered planet, which was discovered in 1930, but is still an important planet. And so you can't avoid other people's influence. even if you're alone all day, you are aware that other people matter. Um, Even if you don't like these other people, even if you don't appreciate them, what they do has an impact on your life, um, for better or for worse. And today, with Venus moving into Aquarius, that's important for a number of reasons. Venus is the planet of relationships. It's a natural ruler of relationships. So that might mean that someone new is arriving on the scene. So if you're looking for a new relationship or a new partnership, someone new may be arriving. Venus might actually have a connection with with career and business. Venus rules Taurus, and I think for you, with Venus moving into Aquarius, it may be that your business and your working life, your career, is in the process of changing. Okay, maybe not today because today's a Friday, but in a few days' time, maybe you need to be thinking forward to the next week. But someone new or a new situation may not even be just a person. A new situation seems to be coming about in your working life that you need to take into account of. I think it can be fortunate, provided you deal with it in the right way. So when there's a change, or when there's talk of a change, you must be able to address the issue. I don't think it's a trivial change. It may be a change of personnel, having to deal with one person or rather than another person. It's not a change that I don't think you can do anything about, but where you do have control is how you respond to the change, and I think that is going to be very important. And it's just important that you're not too stubborn, because I think there is a temptation there to be stubborn. But particularly today, when there is a conjunction between the Moon and Uranus, it's quite a high-profile conjunction between the Moon and Uranus today. You're going to have a strong belief that you are right, that your particular way of working is the right way of working. Now, that may be the case, but what about other people? How is it going to occur to other people if you are incredibly stubborn? It may not occur very well. Now, I should also say that other people, I've talked about other people, and I've talked about the importance of relationships, and I've talked about it in a sort of a way that suggests that you don't have much control, that there are things going on the outside that you're just having to respond to. I don't think you should really get that impression, because that's not really what I mean. There are things you can do to make things even better. You're someone who can make some very good connections today if you try. So Leo, if you're very positive, you can make amazing connections. It requires you, to be positive and to be flexible and to be optimistic. Yes, you are capable of being very optimistic today, but you have to work out how you're optimistic. Because today there is a quintile between the Sun and Jupiter. The Sun and Jupiter are 72 degrees apart. You might say, well, so what? I didn't actually talk about this Sun quintile Jupiter in my overview of the day's astrology. Oh, well, so this is just for you. I'm probably not going to share it with anyone else. I probably will, but Sun quintile Jupiter. The Sun is you, that's your ruler. Jupiter is about being optimistic and about positive. But the quintile is about having to create something. It's about having to create a style. So if you want to have a really good day, I would suggest that you try very, very hard to be positive. And in the first instance, you may not feel positive at all. You might take the view, well, if I'm going to be, in order to be positive, I need something nice to happen from outside. No, you've got to actually begin the process of positive thinking. And I'm not someone who is a big fan of positive thinking. But in your case today, positive thinking could actually be a good idea. But that positive thinking has to engage the world around you. It's about making a special effort to say nice things, a special effort to listen to what people are saying and then say something really positive about them and what their prospects are. Just keep doing it. It may feel completely fake. You may feel like you're almost lying, but just keep going with it. Because I think if you can do that, you can keep it up, then you can actually create not just a nice positive vibe, but you can actually create a very favorable situation, both for yourself and for other people. Virgo. Virgo, in some respects, you may feel that it is a lot of work. And I've been saying this on and off quite a lot recently. This is because we've got all these planets moving into Aquarius. There's a huge build-up in Aquarius. And Aquarius is a sign that is kind of at odds with Virgo. At least at first sight, it's at odds with Virgo. Virgo and Aquarius don't have much to do with each other. And, Virgo is an earth sign. Aquarius is an air sign. Virgo is a mutable sign, i.e. it's a changeable sign. It can move from one place to another. It's flexible. But Aquarius is a fixed sign. And so, with Venus moving into Aquarius, now we've got 5 planets in Aquarius. You may feel that you and the rest of the world are just at odds with each other, and that might kind of bother you. So, how do you deal with the situation? Well, I think what you have to do is be very focused. Take every day at a time. Take every hour at a time, and make sure that you are prepared. Preparation, yes, I think is going to be important. I mean, not just today, but over the next few days. Making sure that you are prepared for all possibilities, or as many possibilities as you can think of. Consider what might happen here and consider what might happen there. And by doing that, you are showing some flexibility. Remember, Virgo is a flexible sign. By showing flexibility, you can actually outpace your opponents or outpace the rest of the world. Because what's actually going to happen to you, how people might behave towards you, there are only a number of possibilities, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 possibilities, but through your flexibility, you can come up with about 10 different responses. And so you can cover everything. And I think that I think puts you in quite a good position, provided you can put in the work. And also, if the world is at odds with you, or if the world feels that it's at odds with you, that may, strange as it might sound, give you an advantage because you're able to have some objectivity. If everything is flowing, and if you think that the world loves you and you're part of the world, you don't even know, you won't know what's going on. You'll just become part of the tide, and that's not what Virgo wants. One of the keywords of Virgo, I seem to remember when I was learning astrology, when you learned keywords of Virgo, is discrimination. And I don't mean discrimination as in discriminating against people. I mean discrimination as in separating things out, discriminating between yourself and the outside world, discriminating between one way of viewing the world and another way of viewing the world, discriminating between what is important and what is unimportant, discriminating between the sacred and the profane. And so perhaps you should be thinking about that keyword today, discrimination. Of course, as I said, I must emphasize, I don't mean discriminating against anything. And so by separating things out, you are really putting yourself in a good position. It might not be easy, but Virgo, you can definitely do it. Don't worry. And another good thing happening today is that the moon is changing sign. The moon is moving out of Taurus into Gemini. You might say, well, why would that be a good thing? Because Taurus and Virgo, they're both earth signs, so there's a certain comfort when the moon is in Taurus. But the moon moving into Gemini isn't such a bad thing for Virgo. Gemini and Virgo are both ruled by Mercury. And with the moon moving into Gemini, now when the moon moves into Gemini, kind of depends where you are. If you're in Europe, it will be in this evening. If you're in Australia, it'll be tomorrow. But if you're in California, it'll be just before midday. If you're in New York, it would be just before 3 in the afternoon. But with the moon in Gemini, I think you're going to feel clearer about what you want, and it will be easier to make plans, particularly relating to career, where you want to go, and perhaps having that crucial flexibility to think about the best way of making progress. And okay, if the moon moves into Gemini tomorrow, maybe if you're in Australia, New Zealand, then okay, then that's something to focus on over the weekend. Finishing with relationships, I don't think things need be too bad, and I think you need to really appreciate the people close to you. Don't be critical. Now is not a time to criticize people, particularly if they're important to you. Yeah, I know you can always criticize them. Virgos can always do that. Virgos, because they notice the details, they can see what someone is doing wrong. They can see the imperfections. But you should be able to also see what someone can do, and you can also see their worth, and you can see how clever certain people are, and you can appreciate their fundamental abilities. So if you're already in a relationship, that's perhaps what you need to focus on. Whoever you're with, that person is very talented, but those talents may not be immediately obvious. They may not want to share those talents with you, perhaps because they don't think you're sufficiently appreciative. Well, perhaps you've got to be appreciative. If you're not in a relationship, or you're looking for new contacts, there is someone out there who is, in their own way, quite brilliant. They might be quite artistic. So, consider who that person might be, and consider how you might be able to bring them into your life. And, one thing you have to, you must be, Virgo, is whatever reservations you might feel, you've got to be happy and positive. You've got to think the best. I'm not just saying that because I think you can right now think the best. I mean, after all, Mercury, your ruler, is aspecting the Sun-Jupiter midpoint. Sun-Jupiter, the Sun is about who we are. Jupiter is about our fundamental optimism and vision. It's about being an optimistic person with vision, and you should be able to communicate that. Might sound difficult, but you can. You can do it. Libra. I think Libra, it's quite an important day because Venus, which is your ruler, is moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius. Now, that's important because it does change the focus. So with Venus moving through Capricorn, many Librans have been feeling that they do need to look after themselves, that they need to perhaps nurture themselves in their own space. And perhaps when you've been out there in the outside world, it hasn't always felt comfortable. And that's because Venus has been in Capricorn. You've felt most comfortable in a place where you're completely comfortable. Sorry, in a place where you're familiar and where you're being looked after. But this is changing. Venus moving into Aquarius, I think will make you feel more confident. After all, Libra is an air sign. Aquarius is an air sign. So with Venus moving through Aquarius, you're feeling better able to show the world what you can do. You can demonstrate your creativity, and you can demonstrate your individuality. And individuality really is important because you are an individual. I know that some Librans might be tempted to just follow the crowd because it's easier. You don't want to cause too much damage. You don't want to say things to upset people. You don't want to do things that might alienate yourself. But really, it's a time to be creative and perhaps to be quite obsessed about your own creativity. I think that's okay to be obsessed about your own creativity because it's important, because there are things that you can do that which are separate from your social life. And by being clear about who you are and what you like doing, you're actually going to make yourself more popular. People will start to think you are a definite and exciting person, and you're the kind of person they want to hang out with, they want to meet, they want to be with, and this also has an influence on something like your career, your business. It's not a time to just be boring, to try and play it safe. People want to be interested, and you are just the right person to make people interested. This all has an impact on relationships. If you want good relationships today and over the next few days, it's just important to be yourself. If you try to be someone who you're not, then I don't think relationships can work because there'll be something fake about it. But if you are who you are, if you're very clear about what you like and what you don't like, what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, then I think that approach will be appreciated. And of course, if the other person doesn't appreciate that, then they're probably not. Then they're almost certainly not worth bothering with. Scorpio, you're feeling that there's a lot going on in the world. You can see it. The world is complicated. It's exhausting. And it may be too much, or it may feel like it's too much. Venus moving into Aquarius is just going to intensify this. It's like in the when Aleister Crowley in his book of Thoth, we're talking about the tarot. He also talks about Scorpios, and he talked about the three aspects of the sign Scorpio. These three animals relating to Scorpio. The snake, the scorpion, the snake, and the eagle. But I think there's a danger that I don't say a danger, but you may go into snake mode. And by snake mode, as Aleister Crowley meant for snake mode for a Scorpio, that's just hiding under a rock. It's not being self-destructive like the scorpion. It's not flying above the earth and just soaring above all the problems around us like the eagle. It's just being the snake. It's just hiding under a rock, waiting for things to move on. And I think that is a certain temptation today. Is it a temptation? Maybe it's the right thing to do. But I think there is going to be a tendency there over the next few days, while we have this massive Aquarius emphasis. We've got when Venus is moving into Aquarius, 5 planets in Aquarius. Yeah, and it just might feel like it's all too much. Now, if you completely hide under a rock today, then you perhaps can't expect much to happen. But maybe that's what you want. Maybe you don't want anything to happen. But maybe that would also be a shame. Because at the moment, Scorpio, there are people who want to get close to you, I think. I mean, Venus is ruler of Taurus, which is your opposite sign. Venus is moving into Aquarius. Okay, when it moves into Aquarius depends on where you are. But when Venus moves into Aquarius, it starts to move towards a conjunction with Mars in Aquarius. So Mars is kind of you. So there are certainly people that want to get close to you. Okay, you can't allow everyone to get close to you, but there are certain people who do appreciate you and who who are interested in you. And I do think you need to give them some space. Obviously, it's all your choice. It's all your choice, your decision, whether you want to have anything to do with them. And I understand that the world might seem pretty heavy at the moment. Especially as the moon is moving out of Taurus. And Taurus is your opposite sign, and it's moving out of Taurus into Gemini. So when with the moon in Gemini and all this, moon in Gemini and Taurus, Gemini and Scorpio are two signs that don't really have a lot to do with each other. They are on different wavelengths, and that might be part of the issue about why you feel that it's necessary to hide under a rock. But yeah, if you do insist on hiding under a rock, then maybe you can. There are a couple of people that you can share your space under a rock with, and there are advantages in being under a rock, as I've suggested. You can think about the world, And maybe under a rock, we think of the concept of transformation. Maybe it is a time where you have to shed your skin. That's what snakes do when they sometimes hide under a rock. And so when the time comes to emerge from your rock, you'll feel in a sort of a much better. You'll be in a much better mood, and you'll be better able to deal with the world and its challenges. But again, don't completely ignore the world. There are a couple of people who I think you need to be in contact with, and I think you can benefit from their company. Sagittarius, you are in a pretty good position. I think you're moving into a good position. I mean, look at your ruling planet, Jupiter. Jupiter, your ruling planet, is aspecting the Mercury-Venus midpoint. Mercury-Venus as a pair are connected with artistic and creative talent. So Sagittarius, you are creative and talented at the moment. I know you're always creative and talented, but you are particularly creative and talented at the moment. And you're helped by the fact that Venus is moving into Aquarius. There's a load of stuff now in Aquarius, which is, Aquarius is about how you communicate. For you in your chart, Aquarius is about how you communicate, how you tell the world what you can do. Perhaps in the process of spreading the word about who you are and what you can do, you can perhaps do some short distance traveling. May not be such a bad thing to do. Maybe someone needs to be convinced. Maybe someone needs to see you face to face. A short journey, perhaps a mile or two. Maybe you can even walk it. Might be worth an hour or two of your time, because once people see who you are and what you can do, they can't fail but to be impressed. So Sagittarius, there are definitely things you can do there. And don't be afraid of trying too hard. You might think it's not a good idea to try too hard. You've got to be natural and spontaneous. But I think today a bit of extra effort could be worth it. Trying to be really optimistic, making a special effort to bring to bear your personality, could bring generous dividends, because that's what people want. And if you can do that, you'll get a really good response. And looking at relationships, the moon is moving into Gemini, your opposite sign. So when the moon is moving into Gemini, your opposite sign, that means that you're able to deal with other people. You're able to think about the other. You're not just focused on yourself. And when the moon moves into Gemini, it makes a favorable aspect to Venus straight away. And so moon trine Venus, that should be good for relationships. And you will find that there are certain people out there who, like you, are capable of being positive, optimistic. They're not completely obsessed about the past. You don't need negativity. And I think that you can find people in situations which are entirely positive, where the negativity in the past can be forgotten. Capricorn. It's perhaps a day when you can maybe slow down a bit. Um, you know, after all, you know, Venus is moving out of your star sign. Um, it's moving into Aquarius. There isn't the pressure on you now so much now that you really have to be um, with other people all the time. You have to be available all the time. You don't have to be available. So perhaps in the past you've made yourself too available, and now you can think more about yourself and what's important to you, and that's maybe what you should be doing. And don't forget money. With Venus moving into Aquarius, you know, from a Capricorn perspective, um, Aquarius is a financially orientated sign, and I think that you, as a Capricorn, you do understand the importance of money, and that's something I think you're going to be regarding as important, and you will be concerned and interested by expenditure. So look at what people are spending. It matters. And I'm not just talking about your own personal finances. So in terms of your career and your work, look at the flow of money. I mean, if it's relevant, depends what you do, but look at the flow of money. Look at how it's flowing. Look at how people are using money. Look at how your company is spending money, if relevant, if that's relevant. Maybe too much is being spent. Maybe money is being spent in the wrong areas. And I suppose you also need to consider what you're being paid. Are you being paid enough? Because if you're honest and objective about it, Capricorn, you may come to the conclusion that you're not being paid enough. So that really is something to consider. Now, I'm not saying that you should immediately make a pay demand, but you need to perhaps position yourself in such a way that you can make more money, or okay, maybe not a lot more money, but you know, I think it's all about self-esteem, isn't it? Or not just self-esteem, but how you are valued, and how you are valued is important, and the financial aspect, yeah, it really does matter. And I think really that is the main thing today. I think that a bit of withdrawal. You don't have to be right in the middle of things today. You've done your bit, and I think spending some time on your own to work things through might be the best approach. Aquarius. Venus is moving into your star sign. And I think, Aquarius, that does make you sort of more attractive, more charismatic, better able to deal with people, and better able to take responsibility. So, you know, if in the past things had been going on that you didn't really understand, you're now in a better position to sort of work it all out, and take responsibility, as I've just said. So if things are happening that you don't like, that you don't approve of, and perhaps that's been happening over the last few days, you can change things. You can say, well, that's enough. And you're helped by the fact that as Venus moves into Aquarius, it makes a conjunction with Pluto, and already there is a conjunction between Mars and Pluto. There's a Mars-Pluto conjunction. I know that conjunction between Mars and Pluto is past its point, past its maximum, but it's still very much there, Aquarius. And so with that Mars-Pluto conjunction, you can really have quite a powerful impact. Yet you can make things happen, Aquarius. You really can. So just absolutely, just don't doubt yourself. And as far as your social life and your whole sort of the networks around you, you can be powerful and clear. So if you're talking to people on the phone, if you feel you need to talk to people, maybe you've got a complaint, maybe you've got a suggestion, the way you come over will be very impressive. So Aquarius, really take advantage of what's happening. Take advantage of your fundamental strength, because Aquarius, it's very real. I suppose I should say something about relationships. It's probably not your main focus, but there's at least one person who does want to get close to you, who feels they need to say something to you, who feels they want to know you better. Might be a good idea to work out who this person is, and how you want to respond to them. But really, I mean, it's your choice. Pisces. Pisces, it's a time perhaps of reflection. Because there's a lot of stuff going on in Aquarius. Venus has just moved into Aquarius, or is moving into Aquarius, and Aquarius is a sign before Pisces. So all these planets in Aquarius will eventually go into your star sign. In the case of the Sun will go into Pisces in a few days. Likewise, Mercury is going to go into Pisces pretty soon. In a few weeks, Mars will go into Pisces. In a couple of decades, Pluto will go into Pisces. But you're in a sort of a preparatory position now. You're waiting for something to happen, and you're in a state where you're sort of trying to prepare. And so in this preparatory state that you're in, as you're waiting for your birthday month to start, you probably need to take stock of what's going on. You need to perhaps do some sort of preparation, some thinking, and there's probably no need to be sort of out there in the world doing lots of different things. You can just pause and reflect and work on what you're good at, and that really is quite important, actually, because Jupiter is your ruling planet. Jupiter rules Pisces, and at the moment Jupiter is aspecting the Mercury-Venus midpoint, and so Mercury-Venus as a pair is about talent. It's about artistic talent. It's about business talent. And if you want to make most of those talents, if you want to really engage with those talents, right now, I don't think you can do that if you're having to deal with the world and its problems and all these people there. It's going to dilute you. And so what you need to do is give yourself the space to focus on what you're good at. And certainly over the next few days, work on it. Perhaps you need to do some practice. Perhaps you need to do some thinking. And you need to, be positive about what you can do. And I just don't think that social interaction is going to be helpful. Now, I'm not saying that sort of in terms of relationships, everything is a desert. I'm certainly not saying that. There's one person who can really cheer you up, who can provide a lot of support, who can provide you with a lot of encouragement. There are other people who can do the opposite, but I think there's one person who really can provide you with the encouragement you need. So work out who that person is, and certainly give them your time and your space. but really don't feel obliged to do anything. And overall, Pisces, I just think it's a time of sort of quiet preparation where you need to really focus on what you're good at, because there are things that you're really good at, and you need to make sure that when the sun goes into Pisces, which is very soon, that you're ready. You're ready to sort of hit the ground and really show the world what you can do. Okay, so now, having looked at the astrology, I want to look at the I Ching. So, as always, I ask the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching segment of this video? The first hexagram I got was hexagram number 57, which is the gentle. What this hexagram is about is trying to find the cause of things. That's one aspect of it. So if there have been recent issues and problems and something we're trying to deal with, we need to work out what the problem actually is. Something needs to be resolved. And in the process, we've got to be quite humble, because it's the gentle. This is not about showing off our ego, trying to be the one in control. Indeed, there is a view with this hexagram. I've got this translation by Greg Wincott. He doesn't call it the gentle. He calls it kneeling in submission. That means perhaps we need to submit to something greater than ourselves. But what we're trying to do through any act of submission is we're trying to understand. We're trying to understand what is going on. And perhaps we do need to submit to some higher power in the process. We certainly shouldn't think, we're completely in control. But we do have a third line moving. Third line from bottom moves. Now, when the third line moves, that can often be unfortunate. The third line tends to be difficult in the I Ching. And one way of looking at this is that we might be really into working out what's wrong. We might feel there's something wrong, and we've got to work it out. We've got to work it out. We've got to be really, really sure. And we may be so obsessed with working out what is wrong that we don't get anywhere. We're trying to resolve something, but by spending so long trying to resolve it, we lose the plot and we don't get anywhere. So that is a real danger. There is also a danger that through our own over-analysis of the situation, we lose touch with larger forces, and we might in the end find that we have to give in to these forces and basically have to submit to something that we don't really agree with. So putting that together, for example, if you're in a social situation, or perhaps you're at work and you can see that something is unfair, you've got people throwing their weight around, and you know it's wrong, but you just analyze the situation and you're working out how to deal with these people. You keep analyzing it, and through over-analysis, you actually lose your power. And these very people who you're trying to stand up against, they overwhelm you, and in the end you're in a situation which is really quite humiliating, and you don't want to be in that situation. So at a certain stage you need to understand that action is required. You can't just analyze the world forever. Now, this hexagram, the gentle, it does move. It moves to hexagram 59, which is dispersion. And this indicates that at a certain stage, things will start to become a little chaotic. Dispersion is often about a storm, not a literal storm. I think it could be, but probably not. That things will start to change, things will start to reverse. There will be instability, and then could be sudden movement. I like to give the analogy with dispersion as like a washing machine. The washing machine gets turned on, and everything gets moved around, and we don't know what's going on. We were trying to work out how to solve a problem, and we were trying to get to the roots of it, and then suddenly everything gets turned upside down. But in the process, everything gets washed away. Many of the problems, the things that we were worrying about, get washed away. And when the storm is over, we actually find that the situation that we were worrying about to begin with has completely changed, doesn't exist anymore. And actually, we end up in a better position. So after all of that, after all of those trials and tribulations and humiliations, perhaps, and having to perhaps submit to someone we didn't want to submit to, and all of this kind of stuff, then the chaos comes in, and then it's all over, and then, well, what are we worrying about? In the end, I think we end up in a better position. Okay, so what I want to do now is look at some astrology. Venus is about to make a conjunction with Pluto. And so what I thought I would do is I would look at a few people who've got Venus-Pluto conjunctions. Now, they're not that... I haven't got as many people as I'd like that I want to talk about with Venus conjunct Pluto, but I just want to air some ideas. And, as I said at the beginning of this video, it's not just about me talking. It's not just a one-way street. You probably have your own ideas about Venus conjunct Pluto. Maybe you probably have a better idea from me what it means to have Venus conjunct Pluto. So I'm just going to talk about a few people with Venus conjunct Pluto, give you my quick views. Having done that, I just want to do a comparison of Diana Rigg and Natalie Wood. That's not really about Venus conjunct Pluto, that's about Mars conjunct Pluto. So let's see, who shall I start with? I will start with Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris, she, as you know, is the vice president, and she has Venus conjunct Pluto. You see, she's got Venus conjunct Pluto in Virgo. Now, I would think... she's got Venus conjunct Pluto opposition Chiron, if you're interested, because she's got Chiron at 14 Pisces. But I really want to focus on the Venus conjunct Pluto in Virgo. Now, one of the big criticisms against Kamala Harris, I don't know whether it's a fair criticism or not, was that early in her career, she had an affair with a California politician. And I think during that affair, she was given some appointments. They were sort of, on the surface, quite minor appointments. I think there was an appointment to some... I think it was the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board, and an appointment to the Medical Assistance Commission. Now, those two things might sound completely trivial, and her supporters say, well, yes, but she launched her political career afterwards. But, she was having an affair with someone who gave her two political appointments, and it may be that those political appointments helped her in her career. I don't know. I'm sure you've got a view on Kamala Harris, but it would fit her horoscope, having Venus conjunct Pluto, of someone who was able to perhaps use her sexuality to get her way. That fits Venus Pluto. Now, I'm not saying that is what happened, but certainly her critics might argue that. I also think perhaps with that Venus conjunct Pluto, as I've said before, I mean, I know that Kamala Harris gets a lot of bad press. She's considered to be her ratings are awful. But you just shouldn't underestimate her ability to manipulate people, and to use her charms, whatever they might be, to get her way. And remember, Venus is in Virgo. Venus is not very well placed in Virgo because because Venus is exalted in Pisces, so it's fallen in Virgo, and Venus in Virgo can be about relating, but relating in terms of always thinking about the details, thinking about how they can benefit from a particular situation. That's Venus in Virgo, and so in the way she relates to people on a sort of a one-to-one level. She's perhaps always, part of her is always thinking, how can she benefit? And so with Venus conjunct Pluto, there may be something quite manipulative about that. Though we shouldn't forget with that Venus opposition Chiron, if you take the view that it is a wound, that somehow she's not fully... she's somehow apart from other people. She doesn't. There's a sort of lack of closeness there. Perhaps Venus in Virgo, opposition Chiron in Pisces. So that might be an issue. But so there is a possible way there how in Kamala Harris's chart how we might see that Venus-Pluto conjunction working out. So another person who has Harris as their surname is Bomber Harris. Bomber Harris, I don't have his time of birth, was born on April the 13th, 1892. And he is famous or infamous for, in the Second World War, being in charge of Britain's bombers. And he took the view that the war could be won by bombing Germany into submission. He made this famous speech where he said something like, Germany through its aggression on other countries, Russia in Rotterdam, the bombing of Rotterdam and so forth, Germany sowed the wind, and now with his bombers, Germany is now going to reap the whirlwind. That's how he saw it. And he had a Venus-Pluto conjunction. Now, can we associate that Venus-Pluto conjunction with what he became as Bomber Harris? Is there anything about bombing people which can be connected with Venus and Pluto? Perhaps not on its own. Venus is, but because we don't have his time of birth. But Venus in Gemini would be very much sort of into ideas, and in terms of other people, being able to be quite callous with Venus in Gemini, being able to use these words like sow the wind, reap the whirlwind, while these bombers are just destroying German cities. The Germans were destroying British cities. And that may be part of it. And of course, he's got Moon in Scorpio conjunct Uranus, conjunct the South Node. I mean, Moon in Scorpio conjunct Uranus could be incredibly vindictive. And I think Moon conjunct Uranus, remember what he said, sow the wind, reap the whirlwind, using this nice expression to justify the destruction of German cities. That would be Moon in Scorpio conjunct Uranus, opposition Mercury. Mercury is is about talking. Mercury opposition Uranus. That's how he articulates it to himself. And he said, "Do we know whether bombing works?" Well, it hasn't been tried before. That was his view. So Venus conjunct Pluto might have some connection with it. there is a view that Venus, okay, it's a feminine planet, but it is connected perhaps with victory. People sometimes don't think that Venus could be a god of war, but Venus is a female god of war. I think it's connected with the Greek goddess Nike? It's connected with victory, not just war, but victory. And so perhaps Venus conjunct Pluto, if you see Venus as being victory, rather than love or money, to see it as a concept of victory. Victory through Pluto, through total destruction. You can bomb people into submission. So, I mean, that's a possibility. Maybe I'm reading too much into his chart. Someone else with Venus conjunct Pluto who's been in the news a lot is Claudine Gay. Remember, she's a former president of Harvard. And she has Venus conjunct Pluto in Virgo. I think this works kind of very well. This is someone who has, from what seems to be the case, someone who is not a first-class academic, but has kind of used her contacts, used her advantages to climb the academic pole. And you can see with Venus-Pluto conjunction, how she must have sort of manipulated her way up to the position where she can be president of Harvard, she's still a professor at Harvard. I think she was earning was it $900,000 a year? Is she still earning $900,000 a year? So she has developed all of these networks of people, and she doesn't strike me, just looking at her, she didn't strike me as being a particularly charismatic person. But clearly, with that Venus conjunct Pluto, she was doing something right. Creating contacts, creating networks, getting on a particular bandwagon, and arguably running her whole career like this, and just thinking about it from a perspective Venus in Virgo conjunct Pluto, just thinking about, let's get it out, let's get this dissertation out, let's get this paper out, but not too many papers, just enough papers, so it doesn't matter whether she's plagiarized or has missed out some commas, because what matters is getting it published. And that can be a problem with Venus in Virgo. Venus in Virgo can just think about the vague details, but not think about the broad picture. So with her dissertation, that was it. This is what we have to do. She's going to do what she has to get it published. Let's not worry about the fact that there might be accusations of plagiarization later on in her career. So, Venus in Virgo conjunct Pluto, very focused on getting her way, making contacts, and her contacts are there to help her. It's all about her. And I think that might be how the Venus-Pluto conjunction is working in the case of Claudine Gay. I want to look at one other chart with Venus conjunct Pluto, and this is quite a tragic chart. This is a chart of Helga Goebbels. So Joseph Goebbels was the Nazi propaganda minister, and his wife was Magda Goebbels, and Magda Goebbels was the sort of mother from hell. So they had a lot of children, and just after Hitler committed suicide, Magda Goebbels killed all her children. I don't know, I think there were 4 of them. Was it 5? I think it was 4. And they were, I think they were injected with morphine, and then she forced cyanide into their mouths. This is the mother, how she had the opportunity to evacuate her children. She could have done this, but before the Russians came, but she declined, and she just waited till the very end. And in the last month, she made a decision. And Helga Goebbels was the oldest, and she was 12 when she was murdered by her mother. And it seems that Helga Goebbels, I think the Russians, after they've captured Berlin, they said that there was evidence that she'd struggled and that she knew what was going on, and she and her mother did not get on, and so perhaps her chart of the other compared to the other children is more important because she had the awareness about what was going on, and she didn't get on with her mother. She was her father's favourite, and so in her case, she has Mars, Pluto, and a Mars, Pluto, Venus conjunction. I mean, that Mars, Pluto, Venus conjunction in late Cancer is pretty intense. It's conjunct the IC. So, okay, the MCIC is about the parental axis. You can see it's also square Uranus. So there is a lot of issues around the parents. So this is a girl who was killed by her parents, and killed by parents who were intelligent, sophisticated people. They had the opportunity to get them out. I think it was said that Magda Goebbels, I think one of her justifications for killing her children was that she didn't want her children to be embarrassed after the war by what her father had done, and by all the vilification that her father would inevitably have. That was number one. And then I think she even said that they might reincarnate and end up in a better place, and that was part of her rationalization for killing her children. And yeah, I think that having Venus conjunct Pluto might be having monstrous parents, particularly with Venus, perhaps a monstrous mother, because Venus is a female planet, and you can see that Uranus is square. Uranus is square the MCIC. So that may be how it worked with that Venus conjunct Pluto. I mean, I'd like to get into that chart more, but I'm sort of running out of time here. One point about Helga Goebbels' chart. Remember, she was killed with poison, and killed by her mother. Well, her mother not directly. I think she got some SS doctor to help out, and looking at Helga Goebbels's midpoints, you can see there's Mars and there's Saturn. So you can see that her Mars and Saturn are 10 degrees short of the opposition. So that means that the Mars-Saturn midpoint for Helga Goebbels is going to be at about 23 cardinal, about 23 Aries. And so she's got so Neptune is at 747 Virgo. So Neptune is 45 degrees from the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So Helga Goebbels had Neptune aspecting the Mars-Saturn midpoint. And what's on the Mars-Saturn midpoint can say something about how one dies. So looking at Alfred Witter and his co-workers, what they say about Neptune on the Mars-Saturn, death by poison, gas, plague, or cunning. Well, by poison or by cunning, I mean, I don't know, you can't really call it cunning, but that certainly fits, death by poison. And very quickly looking at Magda Goebbels' chart, the mother, this is the mother from hell. Magda Goebbels was a Scorpio. Joseph Goebbels was also a Scorpio. Magda Goebbels has Neptune fairly close to the Aries point, and there is her Mars and there is her Saturn. So you can see that her Mars-Saturn midpoint is about 1 degree Capricorn. In other words, Magda Goebbels had Neptune on the Mars-Saturn. The poisoning mother had Neptune on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. and she, which is to do with poisoning. I don't know, Magda Goebbels, she committed suicide. She and her husband committed suicide. I don't know whether she was shot, poisoned, or both, but Eva Braun was shot and I think, she took some poison and then was shot. I don't know, or was that Hitler? I don't know. But anyway, the poisoning mother had Neptune on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and she murdered her daughter, who also had Neptune on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. And I think Helga Goebbels, does show how kind of the Venus-Pluto conjunction kind of at its worst. Okay, so I want to finish by looking at the horoscopes of Natalie Wood and Diana Rigg, because they were both born on the same day, and I've already talked about Diana Rigg. I just wanted to ask the question: why are they different? Diana Rigg. This is okay. Let's look at Natalie Wood's chart. So this is Natalie Wood's chart. That's Natalie Wood's death chart. I don't think where's Natalie Wood gone? There's her natal chart. This is Natalie Wood's horoscope, and it would seem that Natalie Wood's career peaked in sort of about 1966. Apparently, this film came out called Penelope, and that film wasn't a great success. And really, after 1966, it was all a slow decline, I think, as far as Natalie Wood was concerned. Obviously, she made other films, but she was past her peak. Now, if you compare that with Diana Rigg, I think the late 60s was very fortunate for her, and she kept working until her death, pretty much until her death. So you can't say that the time matches up between Natalie Wood and Diana Rigg. So the question is, what is the difference? So this is Natalie Wood's chart, and I think the moon in Taurus, she's got Saturn in the 7th house cusp, on the 7th house cusp. Sorry, I should say, if you don't know, Natalie Wood, she died in this accident, which was it was on a boat, and apparently Natalie Wood couldn't swim, so she wouldn't have voluntarily gone into the water, you wouldn't have thought, but she did, and she drowned. So she drowned, I think she disappeared sort of late in the evening on November the 28th, 1981. Diana Rigg died in 2020 of lung cancer. They had the same careers, but very different fates. Now, Natalie Wood has the moon in Taurus. Now, that is a great moon. I mean, it's a really good moon, having the moon in Taurus, particularly in a female chart, because in a female chart, the moon is really who the woman is. It's not projected. And maybe the issue with that moon is it's quite sort of fixed. It's lucky though. Look at that moon sextile Jupiter. I mean, that is an incredibly fortunate moon. It's in the 7th house or 8th house. I think perhaps a problem with having moon in the 7th and the 8th house is that you may, to an extent, be dependent on outside forces, on how what parts people give you, what parts people don't give you. You may do what you're told, maybe. She's also got Saturn in Aries in the 7th house. Saturn in Aries in the 7th house. Saturn is fallen in Aries because Saturn is exalted in Libra, and it's fallen in Aries. So that suggests that other people could be a problem. She may be damaged by other people, hurt by other people, although, from a Hindu perspective, having Saturn in the seventh is Dikbala, even if Saturn is in, it would go back into Aries in the Hindu chart. But Saturn in the seventh is considered to be it can be pretty fortunate from a perspective of Indian astrology, but still, there is a certain sense there of being dependent on others, and I think, and for some reason everything sort of fell apart after 1966. And you can see that moon. That moon is trine Venus. I mean, that moon. The moon is the engine of that chart, really, isn't it? Sextile Jupiter, trine Venus. It is a wonderful moon, but maybe it's damaged by its being in the seventh, eighth house. That is possible, and I suppose the moon is in a fixed sign, so she perhaps got into her groove. She decided this is the way she was going to do it. Was it A Rebel Without a Cause? That was a film. That was her big film, I think. But that was a very sort of early film. That was right at the beginning. So she was very successful very early, and perhaps she found a groove, and she hit that groove. The trouble about having all that fixity, though, is that once things change, it may be difficult to keep in touch with that change. And there is her Mars-Pluto conjunction. In fact, it's a Sun-Mars-Pluto conjunction in the 10th house. Maybe it's just all too much, that Sun-Mars-Pluto conjunction. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, therefore it's fallen in Cancer. So that might indicate eventual issues in terms of her career. That Sun-Mars conjunction is really angry. And maybe that for some reason that Sun-Mars conjunction is perhaps being projected. That is perhaps talking about the men in her life. So let's now look at Diana Rigg with reference to some of the issues we might be seeing in Natalie Wood's chart. So Diana Rigg was also born on July the 20th, 1938. But she was born earlier. She was born at the beginning of July the 20th, 1938 in Doncaster, England, rather than in San Francisco or rather in California. So it's much earlier. And you can see that the moon is in a different sign. I mean, the moon has gone back into Aries. So, in a female chart, the moon is more important than the sun. The moon sign is more important than the sun sign. I mean, people ask, what sign should you look at when you're looking at these horoscopes? Should you look at the sun or the ascendant? Well, what about the moon? In a female chart, I think the moon describes someone more than the sun. And a woman with moon in Aries, Diana Rigg, if you've looked at her interviews, she's very assertive. She says what's on her mind. She's I think her daughter was reported in the Guardian as saying she doesn't suffer fools gladly. You can see that in her interviews. And so there is moon in Aries, trine Mercury. So that is one reason why it is completely different. Her Mars-Pluto conjunction is not in an angular house. It's in the third house. So it's not as that Sun-Mars-Pluto conjunction is not as prominent, I would have said, as it was in Natalie Wood's chart. And I think that perhaps takes some of the pressure off her. Then one of the most fundamental ways of looking at charts, when you look at a chart for the first time, before you even look at the signs, is just look at the balance of the chart. Now, if you look at Diana Rigg's chart, she's got quite a few planets below the horizon. You've got Sun, Mars, Mercury, okay, Pluto, but Mercury, Venus. So the chart has a certain amount of grounding. Now, if you look at if you just compare that with Natalie Wood's chart, it's not quite so stable, is it? There's a lot up. There's a lot. There's a lot above the horizon. You know, when you've got a lot of planets above the horizon, you kind of think that something is top heavy. There is a lack of grounding there. She's only got Jupiter below the horizon. So from a psychological point of view, just without even getting into the details of what the planets are, the shape of Natalie Wood's chart is less stable than the shape of Diana Rigg's chart. So I think that is a very important difference between the two women. And finally, there is the question of midpoints. Now, I know I use midpoints a lot, and the thing about midpoints is midpoints you use you look at you basically with midpoints. So if you let me just show you, this is Diana Rigg's midpoints. Without getting into details, you can see you create a huge amount of information with midpoints. You get the midpoint of every single planet, and there are hypotheticals here as well, but you use very tight orbs with midpoints. You have to use tight orbs. And so if you've got two people born on the same day, because you're using tight orbs, things can change very quickly. And so when you look at midpoints, Diana Rigg might have a midpoint that Natalie Wood doesn't have. For example, Diana Rigg has a very close square between her Uranus and her Venus-Mars square and her Venus-Mars conjunction. So, I mean, I understand that both Diana Rigg and Natalie Wood were in their own ways, you could say, sex symbols, particularly Diana Rigg when she was in the Avengers. So that Uranus on her Venus-Mars midpoint was perhaps a very important part of it, but it was Uranus. Uranus is quite independent-minded. It's fast-moving affections. Uranus on square the Venus-Mars midpoint, and Diana Rigg has had. If you look at her Mars, she's got Mars exactly conjunct the Sun-Moon midpoint. So you can see that. So there is Diana Rigg's Mars, and so the Sun, sorry, not conjunct, but exactly semi-square the Mars-Moon midpoint. So there's the Sun, the Moon, there's Mars. So is that what I said? No, I didn't mean that. Sorry, let me say that again. Mars is exactly conjunct the Sun-Pluto midpoint. So there's Sun, there's Pluto, Mars is right in the middle. It's exactly there. So Mars on the Sun-Pluto midpoint represents someone who is potentially very assertive. So those are some of her midpoints. What she does, there are certain midpoints she doesn't have. So in the case of Natalie Wood has Venus square the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So there's Mars, there's Saturn. So the Mars-Saturn midpoint would be at around 7 Gemini. So she's got Venus square the Mars-Saturn midpoint. The Mars-Saturn midpoint is the death axis. So Venus on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, I don't know, just something about the way she relates. And she is a woman. Because Venus square the Venus-Mars midpoint could in some ways be the dead woman. And her death is quite famous. She is known for her death. When people think about Natalie Wood, they don't think about just, her film successes. They think, oh, she was a woman who drowned. That's how they associate it with her. And so hence Venus on the Mars Saturn midpoint. She also had Pluto. She had Pluto, I think that would be a semi-square, the Sun Moon midpoint. So Diana Rigg doesn't have Pluto aspecting the Sun Moon midpoint. So Natalie Wood had these two rather difficult midpoint configurations: Pluto hitting the Sun Moon, Venus hitting the Mars Saturn midpoint. So I've probably gone on for too long about midpoints, but I was just trying to look at the differences between Natalie Wood and Diana Rigg, and how, in a way, Diana Rigg, okay, she might not have had the supreme success that Natalie Wood had right at the beginning of her career, but perhaps Diana Rigg was obviously lived a lot longer than Natalie Wood and was working throughout her life, almost right to the end, so their lives are working in different ways. And it seems that with Diana Rigg, she was more able to own her Mars-Pluto conjunction, whereas with Natalie Wood, that Mars-Pluto conjunction may have been sort of projected. But maybe it was just really simple. Maybe it was just about the fact that Natalie Wood had a chart that was mainly above the horizon, and that gave her a critical lack of grounding that led to all the problems after 1966, whereas Diana Rigg had a relatively grounded chart. Okay, that's all I'm going to say for today. I think in this case, yes, as usual, I've gone on for too long. I hope you found that video useful and perhaps interesting. If you enjoyed the video, I would be grateful if you liked it. If you enjoyed the video and you're not subscribed, I would be grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.